Good evening on an early podcast. I don't know what time we started last week, but it's been early since I started producing it this week. We're going to be joined by the Coot Hill Chicago Bulls straight away out the gate. It's a disappointing end to the season, Pingu. In probably not a disappointing game, but it's a disappointing way to go out because considering we were in the game, what was riding down in Weavers Park as well. We gave UCD a decent hammer down there as well, but I think what we're going to probably take away from is just the season as a whole, really. I know we can chat about the game, obviously, post-match podcast, but, have we finished where we deserve to finish? Has it, come to like a little bit of anticipation during the week of, certain goals swing this way? And, we had that little bit of a lead in Weavers Park, draw to win in 2-0, which was kind of pegged back, which I didn't even know about when I was celebrating the third goal. But yeah, look, we talk about the match first. Is it a decent outing to finish the season off?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, thanks, Gally, for having me on as special guest tonight. I think it's only my fourth time on this year. But no, I think in terms of the match itself, yeah, it looked like it was going to start in disaster, didn't it? It was only 6 minutes in when UCD broke the deadlock. Again, it was a disappointing start. It was a disappointing way to concede as well. But really, after that goal, they maybe had a 5-minute spell, but we were on top, and it kind of looked for large spells of the first half that we were just going to keep, trying to knock the house down, blowing and trying to knock the house down. I'm trying to go with UCD kind of analogies tonight after listening to those commentators. And it just wasn't working out. And then once the first goal went in, it was kind of like the floodgates opened, wasn't it? And the whole second half, Archie Davies was taking chances. Duran was trying to get in the box as much as he could. It looked like he was trying to just skin players to get in, and it was kind of just lining up to take shots after their goal for the most part, wasn't it? So I think overall, as far as a match goes, it was a great way to end the season. It was disappointing. It's just circumstantial that I think Sean's made a good point there. You asked the question there of did we finish where we deserve? I'd probably say yeah, because as he says, you shouldn't be relying on Drogheda or any other team to do you a favour, really, for where you finish. And I think the last match I was on was after the Galway FA Cup game. We were talking like the league was over then, and then suddenly results started swinging back in our direction, and suddenly you've got a chance again, so to even go over the space of 4 or 5 weeks of being out of the run, and then suddenly you're back into it. And then tonight, you can't fault Shells for winning it. They've probably been the better team on the whole throughout the season, and I think a lot of people have even said it's a lot of or the 2 games against Shells probably had a big they were a big factor in us not at Talca Park were a big factor in us not finishing fourth.
Yeah, I think even following on from Sean's comment there and Frank, of the 1903, everyone knows who Frank is. The table doesn't lie. It is simple fact at the end of the day. When you look back, I was even just looking back at some of the results, and the lads, those, I used the term loosely, commentators on the game tonight, they were, mentioning the Cork game. We've got Shells earlier in the season, UCD at the start of the season as well. If you got off to a better start, I know it's only one game, but the first game in the season, I get it. It's nervy. You don't know what you're going to get, but you're going to look back on those results and, a few more points here and there. I mean, I think we finished 5th tonight on goal difference, if I'm not mistaken. It's a kind of a, it's not, I suppose in context of a game tonight, it's an absolute, it's a game that we were due. I know, albeit UCD who are already relegated, they're still a handy team to play football against. You expect them to be up for the game, given that it's Andy Myler's second game or last game of the season. You've also got the prospect of Ronan Finn coming into the squad next year. I'm sure the ears pricked up yesterday evening when that was announced as well. But albeit just UCD, it still is a really good performance from Dundalk, and it's not what I suppose. I don't want to go cliche and say that's been missing, but because the opposition is UCD. If it was Sligo or Pats, but I mean what you're going to get asked tonight is after that game, where was that in other games? Where was the the clinical finishing? You kind of had there was that want for goals. I know, like you said, 6 minutes in we've conceded again. I think I can't remember the numbers. It's the 23rd time out of 36, but there seemed to be a want in the second half to really get this game by the scruff of the neck. And there's so many occasions this season where we didn't have that. And I know, look, the season's over now. We finished 5th, and it's it's reflection time for everybody and certain players, and the rumours going around and all this kind of stuff. We can get into that. I'm sure the lads spoke about last week, but if they have had that little bit of want, maybe I suppose, or that little bit of, there just seems to be a little more emphasis, especially with, they probably would have heard the result coming in from Weavers Park at half time, or in or around half time. So you could see it in them. Even we knew what the score was when they were scoring their third and their fourth, but they didn't. And then, but that little bit of tenacity about them, that kind of drive that they had, we've probably been missing that in probably, half a dozen games at least this year. I know we've been poor in games, but there was games that were there for the taking, like Frank said and Sean has mentioned. But you deserve where to finish if you don't take those points. UCD, Cork, Shells that night as well. Those games come back to haunt you on a night like this when you're those little few, a little goal swing or a little few points off from finishing in the fourth spot in the European spot.
Yeah, well, sure. Look at if we beat UCD at the start of the season, then we're in the European spot, tonight. So it probably goes back to a bigger conversation about the recruitment that I think it's been played to death between all the podcasts over the last week. But you're dead right, and it shows, to be honest, what these players are capable of. And I think that's been lost this season, where certain players have been said they're not good enough, they're this, they're that, but there is that tenacity, and as you say, it is UCD, it is the relegated team, but they came out and started very, very brightly tonight, and they took points off Shamrock Rovers, the champions. People have to remember this year, as well. So you can't just knock them for that either, So I think, look, on the game itself, I think it was very, very good. And as you say, I don't think the players necessarily knew the score at Weavers Park, because I think it was either 3-1 or 4-1. I saw one of the players run in to grab the ball after one of those goals and get it back as quickly as possible, So it's just having that tenacity all along. And look, the unfortunate thing is, a lot of these players we're not going to see in the white jersey again. But it just, again, we've all probably questioned at some point this season, or maybe at multiple times this season, Stephen O'Donnell's ability to get the team going. When he looks back on tonight's performance, maybe he'll look back on it, and hopefully he'll still be the manager next year, that he will, he'll have a squad assembled that'll be able to fight like that. And that's, at the end of the day, as a Dundalk fan, that's all you want, right? You want the team that's going to put in that effort. Whether we have the financial resources or whether we're capable of getting a squad assembled like this, who knows? But again, just no matter who's out there in the Dundalk jersey, as long as they're fighting for the cause, that's all you want. And it was great to see that tonight. Yeah,
and I should mention, we were doing our man of the match, or this is our final podcast. Well, it'll be going by the rumours over the past couple of weeks, Pinky, it's probably not our final podcast. We'll probably have to have a breaking news podcast in a couple of weeks from the sounds of it. But it's our final post-match podcast for 2023 anyway, and we can see already with your man of the match, the pizzas coming in, so keep the comments coming in. It could be a one-way. I don't even think Archie Davis, so all the pizzas he's won this year, I don't even think he'll have a look in tonight. But we were the number one, not the number one thing I took from the game, but albeit, look, it's a kind of a double-edged sword. Now we've won, but we haven't got the the result we were looking for all over the season and where we finished. We've had 4 different goal scorers tonight. Now I know, we do have a habit of spreading around it, but the goals tonight, I felt there was just that little bit of. Whereas a couple of weeks we would have took maybe 2 touches out of it. There seemed to all be 1 touch finishes, a little bit of, I don't know what, ingenious, maybe a wee bit, just something you'd expect of first team quality, a team that are a little bit motivated. There's a little bit of confidence there. And that would be nice to see as well.
I think we look fit tonight,
Exactly.
I don't think a few weeks ago we looked fit. Maybe that's just morale was a little bit low, and now we've won 2 games back to back, and they were just like, fuck it, let's just go for it tonight. So that could very well be the case of what happened. But that was I think what kind of impressed me too is, you brought on Keith Ward, you brought Durant on. I'm only going to call him Durant.
I can't every time you say it, I can't just say it in my own head.
But like, these lads kind of up the energy, where I don't think we've had many subs in a lot of games where that has happened. And I know that's one area the skip was actually being criticised, and maybe there's a bit of validity to that his subs have been a little bit all over the shop, especially in the earlier part of the season when he was figuring the squad out. But I think tonight, like, if you're UCD and you're struggling against Dundalk, the last thing you want is Keith Ward coming off when you're wrecked, when you're after playing 11 players behind the ball. Durant, who I think is, I think he only signed halfway through the season, so I think he's probably signed for next year too, you would imagine. And hopefully he'll stay on, because with a preseason under his belt, like, he looks like a real player. And I think we said that earlier in the year, and even when he came off the bench, as I say, he was just his movement in and around the box, I think, was top class. But as you were saying, it was one touch finishing. I think the passing was crisp as well. It's difficult to play when a team plays with 10 players behind or 11 players behind the ball. There's not a lot of space, but we seem to constantly be finding it. And it seemed almost like the right winger was dragging out the full back to let the right back overlap him. And, there was a lot of different combination plays going on. So, as I say, in terms of an end of season match, for the second half, for about 30 minutes of the second half, we didn't have that in the play. For another players that know that it was a spectacle, and it probably leaves you with more what ifs or what could have beens than anything else for when we look back on the season. But I look at as a game, I'm happy with how it went, and yeah, it's just probably need to get looking at the bigger, or talking about the bigger picture now, right?
Yeah, I think we have even anybody joining us tonight, you're looking for your post-match, but I think that everything surrounding, what's coming down the line, maybe, or you've heard different things. Look, we've heard any amount of. I think everybody from Jim Core to Steve Staunton has been buying the club in the last couple of weeks. But is it one of those moments now where you think, right, the season's over, let's reflect on it. Let's, obviously, you don't know who's buying what or who's doing what, but I know there's players being told, look, financially, we don't know what the situation is, and there's an option there for you to go somewhere else. Look, whatever's coming out, but is it kind of have you got a moment now where maybe the staff will sit and everybody will sit and breathe a sigh of relief that the final whistle's gone tonight, and they can kind of just say, right, let's, take a little break, let's stand back, look at this. And like you say, Stephen O'Donnell will be in charge next year. I don't see anything changing there, unless something really goes wrong over the next couple of weeks. But, is it a chance now for them to say, right, let's bookend this, let's get our lists together. They can, even though they don't know what's happening financially, I'm sure they have a plan. You've only got probably 3 months, 4 months to get ready. You've probably got about 2 months, really, 6 weeks. You're kind of coming up on the middle of December. Should they have a kind of a plan in place? Maybe take a week off straight down the line and let's plan for next season already. In a weird way, I wasn't on last week, so I didn't see what Niall was talking, but to the lads, but it could be a blessing. This could be right. Let's recharge. Let's reset. Try not to repeat what's gone on the field, because they haven't been great. Although there is performances like tonight, like the Rovers match, like the Shells a couple of weeks ago, Derry's, where they got beat, but played really well. Is it an opportunity to say, right, well, let's turn the page and let's have another crack at it, albeit at maybe a less financial way. Is it something that they'll be straight away thinking about, saying, right, this is an opportunity now to really kind of go to town on this and reset what we're about as a club?
Yeah, I think, look, at the most urgent thing, right, is to figure out, are they going to have new investors or are they not? Because that ultimately is going to set the budget for next year and where we're going to be at. The fact now that we're guaranteed to miss out on Europe, you're going to anticipate that the budget is going to be lower than last year. And I'm sure Stephen O'Donnell, and by all accounts, without getting too much, because again, I think it's been flogged to death over the last week on all the podcasts, including this with the Pat Hubin situation. But whatever conversation, whatever he was told by Stephen O'Donnell, makes you believe that the budget is going to be significantly less. So you'd anticipate the fact that Stevie's only, or has even had that conversation with Pat, that Stevie is planning for next year. Whether the club has told him a budget, I mean, they probably can't tell him an exact figure if they don't have investment yet. So maybe he's just gone off his own back and he's anticipating what's coming down the road. And who knows, like, we could get investors that want to say they're going to throw million, maybe not P6 money, but they're going to throw a ton of money at it. And maybe Evan Ferguson will come over on loan. Like there's a lot of unknowns right now. And I think hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we'll figure out what's happening with investors. And that kind of gets taken, that kind of gets put to bed sooner rather than later, because I think ultimately all of us, whether it's us on the town end, whether it's local media, etc., we're all playing the guessing game, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I mean, it's we're kind of guessing stuff, and what we don't want to say anything that we don't know. I mean, we can't say anything we don't know. You hear rumors. Look, we all get the same rumors. There's nothing. I think we might have even got rumors as recent as today and stuff, and most of them coming out of Chicago, Pingo. You know yourself, but look, it's great for the crack. You know what I mean? It's great to hear. Oh, what about this? What about that? But at the end of the day, you've got a football club here at stake. There's people's jobs at stake. There's this is like we're having a laugh on podcast or whatever it is, but there's no risk of us. But obviously, we don't want to be liable and saying anything that we shouldn't be saying. But I think now is a time to just kind of say, right, the season's gone. As of whatever time tonight, 10 to 10, whatever, it's over. They'll have the holidays or whatever it is. There's some will be staying on. I'd love to see people's comments on who they wouldn't keep or who they would keep. But I know you don't even know if we have that option of who. We don't want to be so arrogant to think that we're getting to keep players. But there's a lot of talk of Derry's in for players and Galway now up in the Premier Division, and there's one or two looking there, and Sligo and some of the boys from that direction. But you're hoping the likes of even I was listening to another podcast, James Rogers, during the weekend. The likes of Sen and Mullen, I think you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, not even contracted for next year. So even that's probably more worrying than anything else. When you've got players like that, you could really build a squad there of himself, maybe Ryan O'Kane, these type of players, young. I'm surprised Ryan O'Kane's probably the only player I haven't heard of that's been mentioned with a link away at the minute. But and you get messages obviously with Pat and Steve, stuff like that. I mean, in an ideal world, Pat Hooban, you gotta be keeping him at the club. But unfortunately, we don't know the situation. It seems to be a bit of a look, to us, it's a no-brainer to keep him. But I mean, you've hit 150 goals tonight, and you're saying he might be able to have a look at somewhere else. It's not really what you want. I mean, as a striker, probably in the league, you're thinking, nice one. There's an opportunity at Dundalk.
Yep.
But at the same time, you're thinking, what's going on? If a name like that is a possibility being shown the door with a year left on his contract, it's they got to nearly get that sorted out really first and see where they can go then, because the financial, we're assuming that the new investors coming in don't have the finance to deal with it either. Boys can't say now that the new potential owners are going to tell Pat Hooban, look, you're away as well. But it's there's always something at the end of a season. There's always something that just hangs in the background that they just can't kickstart for next year. We had the late transfer signings last season, no money. Season before we had a case being brought to the High Court over O'Donnell leaving Pats. There's always something in the background with Dundalk, and you're hoping nearly they can get this kind of sorted now, rather than drag it on towards the end of the year, aren't you?
Yeah, and look, I think I was just thinking about this while you were chatting there. I feel like over the last probably since the Stephen Kenny era, and I hate that we always go back to that, but it's hard not to. But that was the start after 2016 of 2-year, 3-year contracts. But it seems, and this is probably the one kind of silver lining in the whole situation that's going on with Dundalk right now, it seems like a lot of players are uncertain. Even when you look at Shamrock Rovers, there's a lot of players whose contracts are ending.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard on commentary tonight, but Ronan Finn is signing for UCD next year. I wish we had mentioned it a little bit more, but I think there is going to be a lot of movement around the league this year, so it's not just going to be Dundalk based.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, you look at Pat's performance tonight, and you look at everyone's comments. He's going to win man of the match. He might not have even had to play. I think he would have got nominated anyway. But when you watch the performance that he put in tonight, you're seeing what you're most likely going to be missing next year. And maybe you're not though too, because what people keep forgetting is Pat has a year on his contract, and he can very easily turn around to the club and say, "I'm staying." Do you know what I'm going to say?
That was always a stickler for me. I never understood. I think that was the confusion with people. Why? You can't. It's not like you can say, right, there's the door, we'll have to pay you. So you might as well, if you're going to pay him off, you might as well keep him. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, keep him and stop him from going to a rival next year. Yeah. Even if we're going to be aiming for mid-table again, you don't want one of our mid-table rivals to have a player like that that's going to bang in goals or be the difference. So, even the Pat situation, I know he's come out and had his say on it. Whether he stays or whether he goes, it's really it's up to Pat. You know what I mean? And I think that's the one thing that people are forgetting. As I say, he's got a year left on his contract, so he can just say, I love the club, I love the fans. You can see it after the game in photographs where he was going over the supporters. Maybe he'll stick around. This is my plea. 2.5 years after I was disappointed in performances by Pat. Just
We'll clip the two pieces together.
Stay put for another year there.
But yeah, right though. I mean, like, you know, who's going to say to Pat Hooban, like, right, well, I'm going to hang around, and it's not like you're not going to play him. You know, if he's fit, he's ready to go, he's in the form of his life. You know, like if he can repeat what he's done this year, you know, like who can say, right, well, we're not going to play you. Like, you know, it's you know, he's not entitled to a game. I suppose he's got to show what he's worth. But I mean, there's probably. Like, I mean, probably if you're talking about seasons, you know, Moylan, Rory Keaton, Pat Hooban. I mean, you know, there's not many that will have it. You know, even an average season, he's better than 90% of them. So it's a kind of a, like you say, it probably is up to Pat, really, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we'd like you to look somewhere else. Sure, if he's under contract, doesn't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. And look, I can understand he's hurting if he's had a conversation where he's been told, you know, he's open, or the club is open any offers that come in for him, then you can understand the hurt and maybe the betrayal he's feeling. But that's not the sentiment of the 2,000 plus that go into Oriel every week, or the majority of the 2,000 plus want to see Pat stay and know everything that he done for the club. So look, as I say, at the end of the day, that's his choice. I do, just while we're kind of on the topic of the ownership, I just want to mention something, Gally, because I saw it on Twitter before we came on. I mentioned to you off air that I saw a tweet going that the owners are running away from abuse, as Pat was thanking fans at the end of the game. I just want to say, right, even during the Peak Six era, we were all disappointed. We all made a joke. We all made a laugh about ownership. I don't think any owners, current, former owners, take over Dundalk FC to run it into the ground. And I think it's actually a bit disgraceful that we have supporters that want to verbally abuse ownership at games, on social media, etc. You know, and I think the owner that's been referenced, he wasn't named in this, is Andy Connolly, because I saw it during the game tonight on LOI TV. Andy was flashed up with members of his family during half time of the match. And I think it's honestly, it's absolutely disgraceful that any supporter would abuse not just Andy, but any owner, former, as I say, or current of the club. We're going through a tough time, and fans have every right to be frustrated, but you know, abuse is abuse, and nobody should have to put up with that. And I've seen over the last week or two, Sean O'Connor's getting tagged in tweets. Again, another owner on, you know, part owner of the club. It's nonsensical, like. And it came out obviously in Dan McDonald's podcast this week that apparently there was one deal that was very close to happening, and they pulled the plug because of the furor around social media. If that's the local ownership that was being rumored that was going to invest in the club, and they see the abuse that Andy's been getting, that Sean, that Alan Clark's been getting, why would they? Yeah. And I've seen other people on different platforms saying, like, a few tweets aren't going to put people off. Dundalk's a small town. Ireland's a small country. Like, Andy Connolly getting abuse could affect his business as well. You know what I mean? So it could affect people wanting to do business with him, and the same for any potential investors too. So I think, you know, our supporters, for the most part, are brilliant, and they get behind the club and they get behind ownership. But you know, I do draw the line at any form of abuse. I think it's unwarranted. Again, I'm not dismissing frustrations. I share the same frustrations about where the club is right now and not having answers. But at the end of the day, these are human beings as well, and I don't think they took over a club to leave it in a worse place than they got it. They, in an ideal world, they wanted to leave it in a better place. For whatever reason, that just hasn't worked out. And it's really disappointing to read that, to be honest. And it's one of the reasons why I've kind of stayed clear over the last few months on social media of even tweeting or doing anything about Dundalk FC, because it's a wave of negativity right now. And I think Stevie has a little bit of a point in what he's been saying, or what he was saying last week. Like, it is very negative, and it's very volatile, is probably something that I'd say more than even negative. And it just seems that it's relentless, some of the abuse that the ownership are getting. And I think it's unwarranted, you know.
Yeah, I think if you're, yeah, I agree with it. If, you know, especially when it's like the likes of Andy Connolly stats with local owners, you know, they're not going to try and come in, like, and Andy, it's Andy's second time, you know, like, they're not going to try and come in. And even when Peak Six came in and I was bought off Fast Six, you know, consortium, they sold that in good faith. Now we know what came, and it wasn't. Look, what happened. Like the first year in Peak Six, first year and a half was, it's kind of post Kenny nearly, but they didn't sell the club. They sold it in good faith that it's in good hands. They have the investment opportunity of clubs all over the world. Of the model, a lot of Scandinavian connections and that kind of model and stuff, and the Americans coming in, and so there was obviously a, I won't say embarrassment, but when the shit hit the fan, they obviously felt a want to say, look, we have to put this right, and you have to admire people like that. Like, I know we're going on now, might be getting off the point here a wee bit, but you have to admire people. Someone to say, right, well, I've maybe had a part in this, and which he hadn't, because he sold it in good faith. Maybe I should be the one to put it right, and you have to admire people for stepping back in. Like, we've talked about investment, but I mean, when you look at the players that have come in just haven't worked. But it's not that they haven't been backed. I mean, they're not coming in for cheap. They're not coming in for free. I mean, Darryl Hogan is an international 18 months ago. Pat Hooben's done everything but be an international. I mean, it's frightening that he's never been called up. But these lads are on good contracts, and you've got Durant coming in, and you've Nathan Shepherd, who I'm sure is not on a decent contract because of his performances, albeit maybe last season or early this season. They have been back slightly. Yes, I mean, as a fan, you're looking at it going, could they have done a little bit more? I don't know about on the pitch, but it's probably more frustration that we're not doing anything off the pitch, that there's nothing coming down the line. And it's kind of all culminated in this now. When you hear of the problem is when you hear of investors coming in, the whole situation we had, who've now gone to Shelbourne, people automatically think, oh, we're in trouble. You're not in trouble. It's just somebody's come along and they want to maybe, well, I see a business opportunity here.
Yeah.
Like we had this, I think we dedicated a whole podcast to the whole, it was the week before Shells got the deal with them. The whole situation could have been great. But I think more people were fascinated by, oh, well, if there's players going to be sent over that Stevie doesn't want, well, that was the interference we didn't want. But apart from that, the financial benefit would have been huge. Like, I'm not saying we might have finished a couple of points, but you definitely would have helped in getting players in on loan that we might not have got our hands on. The worrying thing now is that, like you say, and look, we might be culpable in this as well on this podcast. We've been negative, and look, the beauty, and I say it every week. I think I've been saying and repeat myself every time we come on. Hindsight's great. We come on here live after a match. It's very different when and I'm not being disrespectful to any other podcast or anybody that does reporting or anything like that. When you've a couple of days to think about it, it's different. But obviously, we come on here and everybody's fresh. The comments are fresh. What are we talking an hour after the match? So it can be it can get a little bit annoying and a little bit, we're probably more frustrated now than we would be maybe tomorrow if we done a podcast.
Yeah.
But that's the idea of it. It's post-match, it's live.
Well, that's ours is more emotional, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It is,
because it's in the moment, it's right after it happened. And I think even the Men Who Say Football in one of their podcasts this season, I think they even referenced that during one of our defeats where I think we went off for about an hour and a half. And I think the next day they were like, what makes their podcast different to ours is they sit on it for 24 hours before they do theirs. Ours is just highly charged, and we've got obviously comments coming in from people who are highly charged too, but it's just, as I say, just with that situation, it just annoyed me, and it brings on another point that I wanted to kind of mention over the last few weeks is, like, I think as a supporter, and we've obviously got quite a loyal fan base here, and I know Frank has commented already, so I'm sure he's listening in, and he'll be interested in this next point is, there's been no supporters group for the most part over the last 10 years has held the club to account. And what I mean by holding it to account is had that close relationship with the club, that they're able to. The 1903 is still only building as a supporters group, and long may that continue. And hopefully they'll be able to establish themselves to that point that they can have open and honest dialogue with the club. The last time that was done was with the Supporters Trust in 2012. We're now in 2023. Gally, you know as well that we tried to do it in 2015, right after we won the league against Cork in 2014, and tried with fundraisers. And at the point, supporters didn't want that, or there wasn't. I'm not going to say supporters didn't want it. The appetite wasn't there for fundraisers. It seems now like the appetite is there to run them again. But previously, and I'll go back to the trust. It was the trust that ran a lot of the fundraisers for the club. I believe, and I was thinking about this over the last week, I believe the last Dundalk FC ran fundraiser, to the best of my knowledge, was Take Me Out, that I ran when I was in my role as club promotions officer in 2012. Quiz nights were ran by the Supporters Trust. The end the season player of the year awards were ran by the Supporters Trust, so it's great to see that the 1903 have taken that back up. And I think the quiz nights used to be on a monthly basis with the trust.
Right, it was around different venues, yeah.
I think they done a co kind of fundraiser through with Dundalk Football Club during, I think it was maybe Ian Foster's first year, where it was the Friends of Dundalk, I believe it was called. I can't remember what it was called, but there was a suspicious character that was going to double the amount of money that was raised. It was something similar to the patron scheme. The name escapes me, but I think up to 20 grand it was going to be matched or something like that. But we've had nothing like that. The 1903 have come along, and it's been a little bit of a breath of fresh air, but they scheduled a cleanup of Oriel Park not that long ago. And Frank can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was only 5 supporters showed up to support that event. You know,
yeah.
If we as supporters need to maybe take a step back and look objectively, what can we do? Can we?
Yeah.
So what I think a Dundalk supporter should do is support the 1903, help them grow, help them get established, whether it's the current owners or new future investors, that now there's an open dialogue. There's a group that actually has something substantial, because right now, all it is 3 podcasts, everybody on Twitter just complaining, and the 1903 are trying to do their best. But there needs to be a group that has that open dialogue, is able to hold the club to account on certain issues, and calling a spade is able to fundraise for the club.
Yeah,
you know, because you look at, and it's been referenced over the last few weeks on other podcasts, the Bit of Red Trust at Sligo regularly, and when I say regularly, it's once a year, they raise about at least 100 grand that goes into the running of Sligo Rovers. That to me is probably the difference in paying Pat Hooban next year and not paying Pat Hooban next year. So, you know, I think as supporters, and I just reference it, and I've gone off on a big tangent here.
No.
I'm referencing it because I'm seeing that tweet about owners being abused, and it's just annoyed me. As supporters, we need to get behind the club, you know, or not even get behind the club, but get behind the 1903 and support the club that way, where if there is issues like this, there's a big enough fan base behind it that there can be honest conversations held across the table, and just to get answers from the club. Because right now, and I'd even say it through Andy Connolly's first reign as owner, through the Peak Six era, and even up till maybe the last 12 months or so, that hasn't been the case, and it's still only establishing itself today.
Yeah, no, well said. It's and I think we, even our first, I think they're 2 years, Frank might correct me, they're 2 years on the go now, as far as, you know, give or take. So I know in the first year we done this podcast, it was the one thing that was missing. Well, probably not the only thing that was missing, but it's something that we really went for. And obviously, me and you went down this road before, and it just wasn't my thing. Now, look, I have no problem helping them out when it's on. They've done some great nights so far. You know, it's a no reference and not connected to the fact that we're presenting the end of season awards that we've referenced on the podcast tonight. But yeah, look, they do fantastic. They're only beginning. It'll take time, but people got to back. Like, even if it's a quiz, even if it's anything, you got to back it in your droves, because it's that money at the end of the year. It's that kind of, like you said, the Bit of Red are probably, and Bows have done some great work as well, you know, but Bit of Red are probably the benchmark. They're probably the one everybody wants to get. I know they've done like the Bricks a couple of years ago as well. There's always something that they can do. And it seems to me, and I know it's different, you know, stadium ownership and all that. Look, there's certain stuff you can do and certain stuff you can't. But, you know, even things like, you know, just simple quiz. I think the simplest thing to raise money is a quiz night. It doesn't cost you anything. It's pen and paper. I know, like, people are probably sick of them, but it's such a simple thing to do. You know, a couple of quid every month. You don't know where that's going to get you at the end of the year. You can bank it. You can, you know, credit union, whatever it is, you can go get a loan then against something on behalf of the sport, whatever it may be. But it's something, yeah, you're right. It's something that we need to get behind, because these new owners are going to need something and somebody to speak to on behalf of the fans, aren't they, when they come in first time round?
Yeah, and I just want to say as well, I'm not blaming the fans for anything that's happened over the last 2 years, but I think there's been a missed opportunity. Like, and I think I've said it probably on this podcast before. I know at least I've said it to you before, Gally, that in my opinion, the Supporters Trust should never have disbanded at the end of 2012, early 2013. Like, they should still be going. Whether the people that were heavily involved at the time that are now involved in the club were involved or not, they should have passed that on, and they should have still been able to hold Dundalk Football Club to account. And I feel like a lot of issues that have happened over the last few years maybe wouldn't have happened. Or at least the situation now, there'll be a little bit more dialogue, because that's all supporters are calling out for, is dialogue, right? So I just feel that it's a conveyor belt, or not a conveyor belt, but it's a vacuum of negativity at the minute. And I'm probably adding to it with all this as well now at the moment. But I had to just say that because again, we can all be frustrated, and we all are frustrated that we don't know what's happening. That the news that Pat Hooban is most likely leaving is coming out. The news that Daniel Kelly is leaving is coming out. It all adds to the negativity, and we all want to hear what's going on. But at the same time, I don't think that owners should be abused for it. So still ranting, but I just feel as supporters, we probably just need to take ownership for our role in everything that's been happening too. And
it was more when I heard Stevie's interview post match. Look at this well-known clip and stuff like that. Is it a Dundalk thing? I don't pay attention to much. I obviously see the tweets from other clubs and frustrations and stuff, and certain clubs have a right to be frustrated and certain don't. But is it just a Dundalk thing? Because, everybody says that we're a football town. Plenty great work going on in GEA and other sports. But is it just seems to be a Dundalk thing? Or, we just, I don't know what to say the word over passionate, but are we just are we fickle people? Because with the success we had over a couple of years ago, we're just expecting the same, like you said, even a positive vacuum. We're just expecting this to roll on forever. I get the feeling it's just a thing that it's Dundalk fans seem to be. I don't know if it's a passion thing or it's just we get. I don't know if we've all short fuses. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be obviously our social media. If any of us tonight are on social media, it's all Dundalk connected because we're all following the same stuff. But there just seems to be a lot more explosion when it doesn't go right at Oriel Park.
Yeah, I think what it is we all, and I'd say it's we all, because me and you, Gally in particular, that were heavily involved with the Lily White Supporters Club in 2015, we probably gave it up a little bit too easy. We didn't fight enough for it, you know. So I think during the years where we had success, and the success with Stephen Kenny very much came out of the blue, because a year and a half earlier we were almost relegated. And I think we just enjoyed the success and got drunk off the success, and we forgot that it's not sustainable, and people probably forget if Peak Six had not have came in when they did, we probably wouldn't have had the success of 2018, 2020 getting into the Europa League without Peak Six financing that, So I just feel it's maybe a little bit of a delayed hangover, because even in the Ian Foster era, in Sean Connor's era, when we got promoted, like, the trust were still working as hard as ever, and then that all just went away. And it was some good community work has been done by the club in the years after that, but I just feel like it's been moving slower and slower away from that. And now, because everything has kind of gone I don't even know if pear-shaped is the right phrase to use, but now that we're not having the success that we once were, it's more and more evident, because even when you mentioned the press box, listening to that this week, and this isn't throwing any shade at James Rogers here, but he's bringing up about no soap in the toilets. But I had a conversation this past week with someone in the club, and they said to me, and this kind of proves that James is also right, but in 2016 there's the same amount of soap in the toilets now as there was in 2016. Where was the outrage then? You know what I mean? So it's, again, I think a lot of stuff was forgotten about because we were having success on the field, and I feel like the off-field matters, now that we're not having the success, it's coming home to roost. And I just feel like, as supporters, we probably need to get back to rowing in behind the club, or even, as I say, row in behind the 1903. And I'm going to keep harping on at that, and hopefully, next year we can help, and the press box and the Men Who Save Football can help grow that supporters group, because that's the way that the club is going to be successful moving forward.
You've heard it. If you only come on a dozen times a year, or half a dozen times, but if nothing else, we have to clip that bit. That's that reminds you of a clip we had from Mark Roster a couple of years ago in the first year when Kenny was gone, and that kind of clip. But yeah, look, it's and again, we're enabling this. We're kind of probably talking off the cuff here, and we're probably getting more frustrated as the night goes on. But I think we're just that passionate about what it's not that we want, but what we would like to see. And we can talk about players coming and going, and look what's happening at the minute with Pat, and it probably wouldn't happen anywhere else. I mean, as much as we love the club, and as much as we've respect for anybody that's involved in it, it probably wouldn't happen. It just seems to be Dundalk. It just seems to be this kind of circus that's going on at the minute. And like Stevie's right, is we probably are all guilty of being negative. I mean, sometimes or probably not too negative. There's been some performances this year that haven't been anywhere near the standard that we're expecting. But, you know, we try and keep it as much, you know, the positivity king, Steph McKevin, is missing tonight. But, you know, we do try and keep it as much as we can. But sometimes, Pingu, it is very difficult, isn't it? I mean, there's some of the performances. I know tonight's been a great game, but you're nearly delighted as much that the season's ended as much as the result tonight, isn't it?
Well, I think Chris will probably tell us after this episode finishes, but I'm sure the viewership on the night that we've won is going to be a lot less than the night that we didn't. And you'd be a little bit, we'd be a little bit remiss if we didn't say we're more excited some nights that we lose, that we're going to get people to watch, or we lose a tight match or whatever. And like, I think Stephen is right to an extent, especially on the podcast one, because, and I would say myself, even I just referenced that 2 years ago when Peak Six was going through the stuff, I called out performances by Pat Hooban that I thought at the time were warranted. Pat probably didn't want or need to hear me say it. He probably knew himself that the standard and maybe those circumstances around that, we don't know that. We're only giving opinions. We're not experts in the field, but people hang on to what we say. Do you know what I mean? People hang on to what James Rodgers and Craig Colgan say. People hang on to what Ken and the lads say over on the Men Who Say Football, you know. So, and even Dan McDonald on LOI Central, which has a bigger reach. Like, people hold on to everything that's said, and it causes the vacuum. But it doesn't mean that we have to come on and be all positive. Like, we call it as we see it, and if there's good results, there's good results. And sometimes we've lost games and we've come on and said, how do we lose that? And we try to be positive, and we talk about good performances, and we try find stuff that is positive about it. But it's just as I say, yeah, probably you're probably right. We are getting, or at least I'm getting, more frustrated as it goes, because this is my first time on, as I say, in 5-6 weeks, and a lot has happened, and this is therapy for me. I'm getting a lot off my chest at the minute, but it's stuff that I've been feeling for a while now, you know, and even probably going back to 2015, Gally, you know, when we tried to get the Lily White Supporters Club going, and only now, I feel like the chickens are coming home to roost a little bit for supporters, you know.
And we don't want to, like, obviously we know you have to go, you're a busy man, but we don't want to end it on, you know, a kind of a, you know, a ranty note, I suppose. But, you know, I was going to ask, I'll get Chris on a couple of minutes. He's in Weavers Park, so he's running a minutes late. But if we're talking about it as a season, Pingu, highlighted a season, not even highlighted a season, maybe a player of the season from your overall, and maybe even, I was going to ask, you know, a player that maybe underachieved this season, but I don't know if that's gone back on the kind
I'm not going on the negativity, Gally. No, I'm not.
So I think we'll just keep it nice and positive and light. So just maybe a couple of mentions for any player of the season, or, you know, one or two players that you think that kind of stood out or maybe surprised you.
Yeah, I think Archie Davies, you'd have to say, has probably been the surprise package of the season. In terms of underachieving, Nathan Shepard probably hasn't been as good as he was last year, you know, and that could be second season syndrome. Who knows? Yeah. It could be other factors. But for me, the player of the season is friend of the town end, Greg Sloggett, and one player who's been heavily rumoured that he's going to be going, and that's one that I'm sad to see. But it's been a long time, probably since Chris Shields, that we've had a player that's that honest. And what I mean by that is, how many games this season has he had to drop in the centre back? Has he had to play out of position? And he's still giving you a 6, 7 out of 10 every week, you know. So for me, that's it. But I should actually change my mind there. I'm going to say Senna Mullen, because my father's going to kill me if I don't. My father trained Senna Mullen before he joined Dundalk, so I'll have to say a Senna, and fingers crossed he'll still be an Oriole next year. And
that's it. And that's probably a player that, you know, when we're looking forward to next season, you know, you've got the likes of Ryan O'Kane, you know, Durant, you know, we don't know who we're going to be keeping, but definitely Senna Mullen, if you can build a kind of a squad, I'm not saying around him, we won't put pressure on the young fella before he even, you know, plays full 90 minutes. But I mean, if you can build a squad around that type of player, because he looks a real quality asset, and it could be someone that you could be hanging your hat on maybe for next season for his important games, almost Chris Shield like, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's some. I think we're getting the similar mentions in there. Archie Davis. I'm not too sure about Gavin's penalty, Sinead. You know, every week he's either taking a crossbar or taking a penalty. So I don't know how many chances that man gets. But there's another footballer from Fairmont that was cracking back in there. But yeah, look at Tommy. Yeah, that's what it's all about. The 1903. You got to get. You know, it's not a massive financial burden on anybody. It's just joining up, signing up. I think, don't correct me, I think it might be 26, 20. I don't know what the prices are this year, but, you know, it's coming up on that kind of money. But yeah, I think it's definitely viable that we have to, you know, we got to get behind them. And yeah, Paul's right as well. You know, UCD commentators, Yeah, it's one of them that, look, they weren't actually as bad as the last set. The last set really took out. But yeah, look, it's just back at the club, I think, Pingu, isn't it? And just, let's kind of not say goodbye, but say goodbye to this season and maybe, look forward to the next. And that's pretty much what it is at the minute.
Yeah, I think, look, because hopefully Chris will be coming on in a minute because I do have to run. But I suppose I'll wrap up my part in saying back the club, but hold them to account. And the best way to do that is through supporting the 1903 and building that base and making sure that they have the support they need from our fans to hold the club to account.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's probably the only way, because there's going to be no massive change apart from the ownership. You're not going to get, the staff are going to be there, the coaches, although we should probably reference as well, Pingu, you put it into the chat during the week. I think Jason Kelly mentioned it tonight as well, that Dermot O'Neill is retiring. He's not even leaving the Dundalk. I actually read it wrong. I thought he was stepping down, but he's actually retiring from the coaching end of it. I didn't get a proper look at the statement, but I think it's just, is it family reasons, Pingu, or is it just he's kind of fed up?
I'm not sure. I know he's involved with the under-19s with Tom Owen. So it sounds like he's retiring from club football, which has bigger demands, So I'd assume it probably is. I know he worked as a taxi driver in Dublin as well. So it could be related to work reasons. He's had to travel quite a lot with Dundalk this year. So I would assume that's probably what it is. And, Dermot, obviously, his post that he posted on LinkedIn was quite emotional about it. But the one thing, Dermot was involved with the late Sean McCaffrey as well. He came in at the start of that season as the goalkeeping coach. He didn't stay the full season, but he was involved at least at the beginning of Sean's tenure at the club. So an absolute gentleman. It sounds from what he was saying that he loved the players. I'm sure they loved him. He's a character. He's a legend of the game. Comes from a legendary lineage of goalkeepers as well, So I'm sure he'd be missed up around Oriel.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see it. That's obviously another staff member gone that's kind of been there, done it, won everything in the game probably. And obviously we've had relations of Dermot on during the podcast as well. But Pingu, I know you're in rush. We're just waiting on the man himself, the producer, to jump in and kind of give us a dig out here. Otherwise, we're going to be cutting this very short. But yeah, so look, I think that there's a massive wave of kind of player of the season, Archie Davis, and we don't want to go into like the we don't want to get them bogged down by talking about different things. But that's a player even, that you absolutely want to keep at the club for next year. And I've heard a stupid rumour tonight that somebody in Scotland's after him. But I mean, that's a player you really want. I mean, you never thought, like, Lewis McCarry was excellent last year, but we knew Lewis was only on loan. But with the fact that we can tie this fella down and keep him here, you don't want to be selling him, letting him go for nothing. He's an absolute baller, isn't he?
Yeah, and you would think he's probably the only player that wants to stay, because I think he's the only one that hasn't been abused at any point this season. So, but yeah, no, he's a class act. It's probably Watson, Sean Gannon. It's probably the strongest right back that we've had, you would think, right? Yeah. He's just been a revelation this season. I heard on the press box a few weeks ago, he's come from non-league England to play here, and like, it wouldn't surprise me if there's teams in League 1, League 2 might be interested in him, because he's a cracking player. And yeah, hopefully the footballing gods will look on us and get him tied down for next season.
And when you consider, like, if we were ever going to clip something, I absolutely hammered him after the first show of the season. And when you consider that it was between him and Hayden Muller for the right back slot, and I think everybody probably just assumed it was Muller, but he's really made it his own. I mean, he could play there as a right wing back, or be three centre backs, but he seems to just have that guile and that want. Even though he's come in from England and he hasn't played in League of Ireland before, but he looks like a Dundalk player. He looks like he really wants to play football for us.
Yeah,
I'm not saying, I'm sure they all do, but he seems to have that little bit of cutting edge, that he's determined to play week in, week out and give it 100%.
Yeah, well, he's an attacking fullback, isn't he? So you're not just seeing him defending, you're seeing him bombing forward too. And he just as you say, he looks like he's enjoying his play. He looks like he enjoys the club. But at this point, anything we'd say would be speculation. But fingers crossed, wishful thinking. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think if they can keep maybe look at 3 or 4 players and who've performed each season, each week in, week out, I think we're looking at a solid kind of start, at least I suppose a foundation for next season. I don't see Chris Clark and Indy offing Pingu, so I think we might have to. I don't want to tempt him, but he did say he's on the way. But you know what Chris is like driving on the motorway. I don't know how long you have. I know you have to cut loose.
I do. I have to cut loose 6 minutes ago, but
yeah, I think we will, folks. I think we'll wrap it up there. If Chris does jump on before he finishes a little bit, we'll get it in. But Pingu, look, I think I think Archie Davis, we're just going to do our man of the match pizza very, very quickly. As you're jumping off there and you haven't been on too much, you want to pick a name out there. I think we have a couple for Pat Hoban. I think the Archie Davis Country Mile was kind of the season one, but I think there really only is one winner, the man of the match pizza. So if you pick any name from the comments there, we'll have a winner for the pizza tonight.
I am going to pick Mark Carlin as the winner of the pizza.
Mark Carlin, the globe-trotting Mark Carlin. Where he is tonight and where we can send our pizza tonight, I don't know. Where is he? Mark, there we go. Yeah, massive contributor, always on YouTube. Done the famous video, if you haven't checked it, on Twitter, of the San Siro, Pat Hoban on the screen of the San Siro. So Mark, you won yourself a pizza. When you're back in the door, give them a shout and we'll tell Vinny and the lads to have it ready for you. Pingu, look, appreciate you coming on. Chris is nowhere, so he's going to be really at some shock when he logs in and there's nobody there talking the podcast. So look, we'll get talking to you again, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the sponsors. Playoff fit for the gear. We'll have possibly new gear in 2024. This isn't the last podcast of the year, because as we know, there's going to be probably breaking news with an ownership in a couple of weeks. So we will. There you go. Look at Mark's in Mexico. Yeah,
I'm sure we'll do a season episode with we'll try to get the whole crew on.
We'll do a season review of. We'll get Sharon's husband in, Steph, and we'll get Rachel's husbands in, Donald. We'll get them in to join us on the podcast. But Pingu, look, it's been a pleasure as always. Folks, thanks very much for commenting in. And we'll go again. Yeah, Damien, look, really appreciate it again. We'll see everybody at the 1903 Awards as well. So they're giving out the Player Season Awards. Comes up. Have a look, have a couple of pints. Get the boys at the bar nice and busy, and we'll entertain you on the night, hopefully put some stories and a bit of crack. So Pingu, appreciate it, and look at folks. Cheers. We'll see you in a couple of weeks hopefully, and we'll have a season review. All right, come on to town.